People always ask for something new. It's inevitable. At 50, well, it stops.
If you're convinced the substance is about beauty standards and ageing, a trope oft covered, then you've missed the grotesque point entirely. Coralie Fargeat didn't just dip a toe into feminist horror, she cannonballed into the narcissistic abyss of self-destruction, complete with exploding heads and a final crawl toward Hollywood fame. So let's deep dive into the satire with extra gore, and just how wrong the interpretations on societal beauty standards, the ending and the single consciousness confusion really are. There are major spoilers throughout this review, you've been warned. But before we get into the guts of it, quite literally, I want to highlight the score. I don't think it's getting enough credit. It's the perfect soundtrack for self-destruction. Composed by Robin Coder, aka Rob, who also did the score on Revenge, Fargeat's first movie, the soundtrack is as essential to the film as a celebrity's latest skincare regimen, over the top and utterly necessary. Rob crafts a musical landscape that mirrors the film's absurdity, blending eerie electronic sounds with dramatic strings to underscore Elisabeth's spiralling descent into madness. The score is a character in its own right, almost like that overzealous friend who keeps encouraging you to get some work done. In moments of tension, Rob uses a cacophony of sounds that mimic the inner turmoil of a woman caught between her youthful dreams and the reality of ageing. When Elisabeth gazes into a mirror, the score swells with distorted notes, turning what should be a moment of reflection into a haunting melody of self-loathing. It's like the soundtrack is leaning in close and whispering, "You're not as fabulous as you think, darling." During the film's climax, where Sue transforms into a grotesque monstrosity, the music reaches a fever pitch, full of sharp crescendos that would make even the bravest heart skip a beat. The use of silence is equally effective. In those moments when the music suddenly cuts out, the absence of sound is deafening. The substance follows Elisabeth Sparkle, a fading Hollywood star who's hit the dreaded 50 and is desperate for a second shot at youth, because clearly the first 50 years weren't enough drama. To achieve this, she turns to an experimental drug that doesn't just give her a facelift, it births Sue, a younger, hotter version of herself. But here's the kicker. They share one consciousness, tag-teaming control of two bodies. Sue and Elisabeth aren't rivals, they're one narcissistic mess fighting for screen time. At first, the deal seems golden. Sue effortlessly steps into Elisabeth's life, soaking up the fame and attention that she so desperately craves, because heaven forbid the public stops caring. But naturally, Sue, being the younger, shinier version, starts hogging the spotlight. She overstays her welcome, using a serum extracted from Elisabeth to steal more time. As Sue thrives in the limelight, Elisabeth's body starts to fall apart, quite literally. Elisabeth, understandably fed up with being reduced to a flesh puppet, decides she's had enough. The plan? To kill the younger body using a special serum. But in a final moment of weakness, or maybe vanity, Elisabeth hesitates, leading to a glitch where both bodies coexist. Cue the ultimate narcissistic showdown, two bodies, one fractured mind, two desperate sides of the psyche bidding for survival. It's not a fight between two people, it's one gloriously deranged person at war with herself. And then we arrive at the film's peak spectacle, a live New Year's Eve show where Sue, now a disfigured, monstrous version, because self-destruction really is a showstopper, explodes on stage. In a final act of tragic desperation, Elisabeth's face painfully crawls out from the wreckage and makes a beeline for her Hollywood Walk of Fame star. Coralie Fargeat, in her second directorial role, wasn't just interested in showing the surface brushes of beauty. Visually, the substance is a neon-drenched satire that cleverly mocks Hollywood's obsession with youth, using exaggerated colours and sharp contrasts that scream, "Look at me!" The colour palette is a garish blend of bright pinks, electric blues and harsh greens, creating a hyper-real, Instagram-filtered nightmare, like someone accidentally applied every saturation slider to maximum and forgot to turn it off. Fargeat's frequent close-up of mirrors drive home the theme of self-obsession. Elisabeth, in her relentless pursuit of perfection, is caught in a cycle of admiration and dread as she stares at herself. The camera lingers on these reflections, making the audience complicit in her vanity, as if we're all staring into the same abyss together. Wide shots are employed to showcase the grandeur of Elisabeth's surroundings, lavish homes with no photos of friends or family, but carefully curated objects, glamorous parties, and her so-called perfect life. The larger the frame, the smaller Elisabeth feels within it. It's as if the film is saying, "Congratulations on your stunning life. Just kidding. Your soul is still trapped in a brightly lit box of despair." So who's ready for their close-up? In a brilliant stroke of meta-commentary, Demi Moore was cast as Elisabeth Sparkle, an ageing star desperate for a second youth. The casting of Moore, who's had her own public struggles with fame and appearance, wasn't a coincidence. A fading star whose desperation for attention and validation drives her to extreme lengths. Moore is more than just a figure of past Hollywood glamour. Her portrayal taps into the insecurities that ageing actresses face in an industry obsessed with youth. Her character's self-obsession isn't just a byproduct of Hollywood. Elisabeth craves the adoration she once had, making her own narcissism her undoing.
I'm fine. Everything's fine.
It's just worth something.
Moore gives a career-defining performance and deserves at least a nomination for that Oscar. Margaret Qualley plays Sue, Elisabeth's younger, perfect doppelganger. But here's the catch. Sue is not just a reflection, she's part of the same fractured consciousness. Qualley captures the cold detachment of youth and beauty, representing the very thing Elisabeth used to be but can never sustain. Sue is the embodiment of Elisabeth's vanity and self-loathing, making the shared consciousness between the two characters a chillingly personal battle. Qualley's Sue is self-indulgent and ruthless, manipulating her own self for more time in the limelight, highlighting how this internalised feminine narcissism doesn't just affect Elisabeth, but the woman she perceives herself to be. Dennis Quaid's Harvey is the sleazy Hollywood executive who embodies the industry's exploitative nature. He's more than just a typical villain. His role shows how the system dangles validation in front of women like Elisabeth, only to discard them when they're no longer useful. Quaid's character is the external force that pushes Elisabeth further into self-destruction, reminding us that while Elisabeth's narcissism is self-inflicted, Hollywood has no problem providing the tools for her undoing. And there's one particular scene where you'll never view Shrimp quite the same way again. The rest of the cast, though limited in screen time, plays crucial roles in the ecosystem that reinforces Elisabeth's obsession. At its core, The Substance isn't just a critique of beauty standards. It's a deep dive into the horrors of narcissism and the consequences of seeking validation in all the wrong places. The central theme revolves around self-obsession and how chasing a perfect version of oneself ultimately leads to destruction. Elisabeth Sparkle's story isn't just one of a woman fighting against ageism, it's about the consequences of letting vanity and self-image become the sole purpose of existence. The film also addresses the nature of Hollywood. Through characters like Harvey, The Substance shows an industry that glorifies youth and discards women once they've reached a certain age. The film portrays Hollywood as indifferent. It shows itself using women until they break, and replacing them with younger models without a second thought. Additionally, Fargeat uses body horror as a metaphor for how vanity and narcissism consume individuals. Elisabeth's physical disintegration represents the psychological toll of striving for unattainable perfection. Her literal melting into the Hollywood star at the end of the film is a powerful statement on how those who chase fame are often destroyed by it. The film also touches on themes of identity and self-destruction. What happens when you're faced with the perfect version of yourself? This is a brutal exploration of feminine narcissism, with Hollywood as the ultimate enabler, chasing the very standards that will destroy her. Hollywood, of course, is happy to play along. It's about the way women, particularly in the spotlight, are driven to self-destruct in the pursuit of external validation. Whilst Hollywood fans the flames of her narcissism, Elisabeth does this to herself, even choosing not to get rid of Sue, as the external validation she receives when inhabiting this younger body is integral to her worth. The beauty of The Substance's ending is that it perfectly highlights this toxic relationship. Elisabeth craves fame, and fame couldn't care less. Hollywood gives women like her the tools to destroy themselves, and then moves on. The film shows how, whilst Hollywood is an enabler, this feminine narcissism is very much self-inflicted. And if you've enjoyed this review, why not give the video a like? After all, a little validation never hurt anyone, right? Please don't make me have to explode and crawl towards a star to get it. And if you're new here, consider checking out my channel. I will also be doing a full review of Revenge, Fargeat's directorial debut, in the future.